Number 8. Natalie Wood. American actress Natalie Wood died on November 29, 1981 under mysterious circumstances. She was on a weekend trip to Santa Catalina Island on her husband Robert Wagner's yacht called Splendor. Also on board was Wood's co-star from the movie Brainstorm, Christopher Walken, and the boat's captain Dennis Davern. Unfortunately, not much else is known about the night Wood drowned. It's never been determined how she got in the water. Was she going for a late-night swim? Were there others with her? Was there foul play involved? These questions haven't been answered even today, over 40 years later. Wood was recovered by authorities at about 8 a.m., roughly 1 mile away from the yacht with a small inflatable dinghy nearby. According to Wagner, she wasn't with him when he went to bed that night. When an autopsy was performed, Wood was found with bruises, and there was also a lesion on her left cheek. Mysteriously, there was no indication as to how she received the injuries. Captain Davern initially reported that Wood and Wagner had gotten into a fight that night, but Wagner denied the allegations. But in his memoir called Pieces of My Heart, Wagner confessed to arguing with Wood before she disappeared. The actress had a blood alcohol content of 0.14%, and there were also traces of painkillers and motion sickness pills in her bloodstream, both of which increased the effects of alcohol. Thomas Noguchi, the Los Angeles coroner, ruled Wood's cause of death to be accidental drowning and hypothermia, and based on what he thinks happened, Woods got too drunk and slipped off the dinghy while trying to reboard. But according to Wood's sister Lana, the victim couldn't swim and was terrified of water her whole life. Witnesses on a boat nearby also claimed they heard a woman screaming for help in the middle of the night. In 2011, years after Wood's mysterious death, Davern stated publicly that the woman had been flirting with Christopher Walken and that her husband was jealous. Davern claimed Wagner was somehow responsible for Wood's passing, although he had no proof. The investigation was reopened in February 2018, and Wagner was named a person of interest by the police. The authorities stated that they know Wagner was the last person to see Wood before she died. But what's odd is that in early 2022, he was cleared of all accusations by the LA County Sheriff's Department. So, for the time being, the death of Natalie Wood remains a mystery. Number 7. Thomas and Jackie Hawks. A married couple from Arizona were murdered in 2004 after heading out to sea on their 55-foot yacht, the Well-Deserved. Thomas and Jackie Hawks were trying to sell the boat so they could move to Newport Harbor and be closer to their grandchild. The man they were planning to sell to, Skylar Julius DeLeon, met them at the harbor on November 15th. Initially, Thomas and Jackie were cautious of DeLeon, but they came around to him when he brought his pregnant wife Jennifer Henderson and their other child to the meeting. DeLeon and Henderson wanted to test out the yacht before buying it, so they boarded the boat and headed into the water. But when the yacht returned, Thomas and Jackie were nowhere to be seen, and to this day, neither of their bodies have been recovered. It took about 5 years for this case to be solved. In April 2009, DeLeon and Henderson were charged with the couple's murder. As a result, DeLeon was sentenced to life while his wife was given 2 consecutive life terms in prison without parole. 2 other people, Alonzo McChain and John Fitzgerald Kennedy, were also convicted separately for the killings. McChain was a former Seal Beach correctional officer who met DeLeon while serving time for burglary. Kennedy was once a member of the Crips gang in Long Beach and an ex-convict for an attempted murder charge. An investigation into the couple's disappearance was launched after an attempt to access the Hawks' bank account from Mexico in late November was made. Shortly after, a missing persons report was filed to the Carlsbad, California Police Department. When DeLeon was interviewed, he claimed that he bought the boat from the couple and showed the officers the official proof of purchase documents. He also said that after they purchased the yacht, both Thomas and Jackie got into their car and left. He then named Alonzo McChain as a witness, but McChain fled to Mexico not long after the crime was committed, and he later confessed, dragging DeLeon, Henderson, and Kennedy all down with him. It was revealed that on the day of the sea trial in Newport Beach Harbor, DeLeon and his accomplices, Kennedy and McChain, gagged and bound the Hawks before throwing them overboard, tied to the yacht's anchor. As a result, McChain received 20 years and 4 months in prison. Kennedy was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Both he and DeLeon are currently on death row at San Quentin State Prison. Number 6. Sir Peter Blake. In 2001, a world-famous sailor named Sir Peter Blake was shot to death by a group of armed pirates called the Water Rats during a robbery in the Brazilian Amazon. The 53-year-old had just returned from dinner in Macapa with his crew when a group of 8 pirates arrived at his yacht on a rubber dinghy. The gang were all wearing motorcycle helmets and made their demands, but according to Brazilian police, Blake grabbed his gun and shot at one of them. Then, in retaliation, the robbers returned fire, ultimately killing Blake. This was a tragic end for a man who dominated the world of sailing for over a decade. Blake secured the sport's most prestigious award, the America's Cup, twice for New Zealand. He was also the only person to finish 5 Whitbread round-the-world races. When Blake was killed, he was on a research expedition as a Goodwill Ambassador for the United Nations Environment Program. He wanted people to care for the environment, and in his own words, he wanted to make a difference in the world. Unfortunately, his life was cut short, but at least his killer, who was later identified as Ricardo Colares Tavares, was sentenced to 36 years behind bars. Number 5. Murder at sea. Around 2012, at least 4 men were killed at sea and the entire incident was captured on video. But surprisingly, the crime was never reported since it's not legally mandatory under maritime law. The incident happened somewhere in the Indian Ocean, but the motive and identities of everyone involved remain unknown. The video was recorded on a cell phone recovered from a taxi in the Fijian capital of Suva in 2014. For this reason, it's unclear exactly when the crime took place. At about 30 seconds into the recording, a man is seen bobbing up and down in choppy water. Then, gunshots can be heard and the man is hit several times. Eventually, he's no longer able to move. Another man is then seen in the water, and the same thing happens to him too. Over the next 6 minutes and 58 seconds, a slow-motion slaughter unfolds. 3 more people floating in the ocean, some clinging to what looks like an overturned wooden boat, are shown surrounded by several white tuna longliners. As the engines of the ships idle, another 40 rounds are fired as each of the unarmed men are picked off. From one of the boats, a loudspeaker commands, "Shoot, shoot, shoot," as the last man in the water is killed. Afterward, a group of people on the deck of one of the ships is shown laughing and posing for selfies. Unfortunately, since there have been no identified victims or bodies, and the exact location of where the shootings happened is unknown, it's unclear which, if any, government will take responsibility for and lead an investigation into the matter. It's now been 9 years since the footage was found, and almost nothing has been done to solve the crime. How do you think the men in the video should be punished? Who should take responsibility? Let us know what you think in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you like the video so far. Number 4. Heinous and cold-blooded. In early 2023, 2 men were sentenced to death after some high-seas piracy attacks left 7 fishermen dead off the coast of Guyana in 2018. 45-year-old Nakul Manohar and 48-year-old Premnath Persad were convicted of masterminding the attack on a group of fishing boats near the South American country of Suriname. Although there were casualties, a dozen people were rescued after drifting in the water for days. According to police, some of the men were thrown overboard after having their hands tied, or they were weighed down with boat batteries. But there were others that endured much worse, since some of them were reportedly burned with hot engine oil or chopped into pieces with machetes before being tossed into the Atlantic Ocean. The judge appointed to the pirates' case, Justice Navindra Singh, described the crimes as heinous, and he even said there was no reason not to impose the death sentence. He explained to the jury and everyone else in the courtroom that it would be irresponsible and reckless for him to let Manohar and Persad be released back into society. And so, as punishment, both men were sentenced to death. Number 3. Cocaine smuggler. In 2013, a yacht moored at a marina in West Palm Beach, Florida had 620 pounds of cocaine on board. According to federal agents, the amount of drugs recovered was worth somewhere between $5 and $6 million. John Paul Costenbader, the yacht's captain who worked with the Discovery Channel in the past, faced federal charges after investigators witnessed the 34-year-old moving duffel bags full of cocaine from his boat into a truck at the Palm Harbor Marina. The intended recipient of the illegal drugs, 26-year-old Stephen Torello Davis and 33-year-old Michelle Caribe Daniel, who apparently admitted to carrying the drugs, were also arrested and faced smuggling charges. The owner of the ship is unclear, but a Marshall Islands flag was fixed to the back of the vessel. Davis, Costenbader, and Daniel were all taken into custody and charged with conspiracy to possess with intent to deliver more than 5 kilos of cocaine and conspiracy to import more than 5 kilos of cocaine. Costin Bader pleaded guilty and confessed that he was paid over $1 million to make 5 trips that summer between South Florida and the Bahamas. But the name of who paid him was never revealed, and mysteriously, the outcome of the case is unclear, and it's not known whether or not the men were ever given prison time. Number 2. Yacht hijacking. In 2011, 4 Americans were killed by pirates off the coast of Somalia after their yacht was hijacked. The victims were the first Americans to be murdered by pirates in years. The owners of the yacht, Gene and Scott Adam from Los Angeles, California, as well as passengers Phyllis McKay and Bob Riggle from Seattle, were taken hostage by the Somali pirates several hundred miles from the Sultanate of Oman. Their deaths seem to underscore an increasingly aggressive shift by pirates in their treatment of hostages. One pirate that was later identified from the attack, Musa Abdi, told authorities that killing hostages has now become part of our rules. He explained that from then on, anyone who tried rescuing the hostages in their possession would only collect dead bodies. The pirates hijacked the 58-foot yacht, but later 4 U.S. warships, as well as sky-high drones, pursued the vessel as the thieves tried to sail to Somalia. U.S. officials negotiated via radio with the captors, but then the pirates launched a rocket-propelled grenade at authorities. It missed, although immediately afterward, gunshots were heard from inside the yacht. Several of the pirates then appeared on the deck of the ship with their hands up. Naval forces boarded the vessel to help the hostages, who were found with serious injuries. Unfortunately, they died while on the yacht. A total of 13 pirates were detained, 11 of which were sentenced to mandatory life sentences. Somali hostage negotiator Mohammed Salih Shabin was handed 12 life sentences for his role in the hijacking, but he avoided the death penalty. Number 1. People smuggling. In November 2020, a converted fishing trawler called the Swanich was stopped off the coast of Norfolk and was transported to Harwich, Essex, where a total of 69 illegal migrants were discovered on board. 5 people were charged in connection to the crime: Igor Kosi, Arturas Jusis, Kafir Ivgi, Sergej Kulis, and 44-year-old Alexander Gulpe. The gang attempted to smuggle the individuals into the UK, but their plans were thwarted by authorities. Law enforcement was first alerted to the people smuggling operation after receiving reports of suspicious activity when the Swanich ran aground off the Swedish coast just 15 days earlier. Prosecutor Charlene Sumnall told the BBC that the 98-foot-long trawler had been sourced from Latvia and chosen for the job since she was cheap and would avoid suspicion. But the smugglers were wrong. Luckily, none of the migrants being transported illegally into the country were injured during the trip. In the end, all 5 men were found guilty of conspiracy to assist unlawful immigration. Arturas Jusis was jailed for 9 years and 9 months, Kafir Ivgi was handed 10 years, and Sergej Kulis was given 9. Ukrainian national Igor Kosi was sentenced to 7 years behind bars, while Alexander Gulpe received 8. If you were on a sinking boat, would you rather jump overboard and try swimming to shore? Or would you try getting on a lifeboat even though they were too full? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Bad Badger.